Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and I wanted to make a quick video about Cloud9's last two games. So, spoiler alert, Cloud9 just lost to Evil Geniuses. That makes this a two-game losing streak for Cloud9. So, 100 Thieves beat Cloud9. We're going to go over this game first. So, let's take a look at the draft. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit just so that we know which champions are picked and in which order. Alright, so we have Karma as a first pick. I think Karma's fine. Her power has been overstated, I think, significantly by a lot of professional teams and analysts. Having Karma as a champion on your team is not powerful unless you build your team composition around the enchantments that Karma is going to give. So most Karma players are going to build Athenes and Ardent Censer. Athenes heals teammates and shields teammates. Heals teammates when you shield them, which is very strong, because Karma has her mantra empowered shield, which can shield her entire team. Athenes is also Ardent Censer is also very powerful because it gives her teammates attack power or attack damage attack speed and on hit damage. So these are very important things that increase the power level of their team significantly in bursts throughout a team fight. So the way to think of it is like if 100 Thieves power level in a team fight is like a 95, I'm just using arbitrary numbers. Every time that Karma uses an empowered shield, the power level of her team shoots up to 100 for the duration of the shield and the on-hit effect and the increase in attack speed. So it's giving yourself a burst of power throughout team fights, which is difficult to take advantage of. So that's why it's not just enough to have those items. You also need to have champions that can continuously apply those buffs and really maximize the efficiency of those items. Because buying the correct items is only good if you use them the correct way as well. It's not as simple as building an item and just letting it carry you. Cloud9 responds with Wukong and Senna. I think Senna is one of the best champions on the patch right now. I don't think there's anything wrong with picking Senna. I don't think they needed to pick Wukong yet. So the idea here is that Wukong is a flex champion, similar to how Karma is a flex champion. Wukong can go top lane. Theoretically, it can jungle. We have seen Wukong jungle. It's not great in my opinion, but it's possible. And then we also see Wukong as a support with Senna. So it is giving them flexibility, but I don't think that C9 really intended on flexing Wukong because of how they followed through in this draft. So they pick up Jarvan. So Jarvan plus Wukong plus Senna is a pretty good wombo combo. But it's not game-winning because it is all the same kind of damage. So if they really wanted to kind of leverage into this wombo combo playstyle, I think something like a Rumble would have made a lot of sense as the fourth pick, and it still would have given them flexibility. Next up, we have Olaf and Ashe on 100 Thieves. Now, obviously, I've been critical of Olaf as a champion in previous videos. However, when you bring an enchanter onto a team with an Olaf, it increases the duration of his power spike in the middle game because he doesn't need to worry as much about his effective health. Because even though he's going down, which gives him more power through his passive, he is getting shields, which is giving him artificial effective health. So it's increasing his health pool a lot while he maintains the additional power that he gains from his passive, being at a lower percentage of maximum health. Ashe Karma is a good combination against Senna Wukong. It does punish the Wukong a little bit because it's going to be difficult for him to be the one gathering all of the farm. So I forget if Senna is the one who farms up this game or if it's Wukong, so we'll have to take a look at that. Once the Ashe and Karma are locked in, I think you need to start considering not playing Wukong as the support unless you're going to get a good counter pick in the top lane, which they do not go for. So they ban out Malphite. I don't really know about the Malphite. ban. I don't think that's a very good ban. And then they have Thresh. So Thresh is a good champion against Poom, apparently, because Poom does play a lot of Thresh, I hear. Then we have an Orianna ban and an Azir ban. So another option that C9 had was picking something like the Galio. So that would have probably been a pretty good pick. It is a little bit more difficult to play into Ashe because she can kite you around, but you're really looking for the Wombo combo engage. You have Jarvan that you could have vaulted onto. You have the Wukong that you could have vaulted onto. So I do think that Galio was probably just objectively a better pick than the Jace. Now let's talk about the problems of picking Jace. So when you pick Jace, you tell the enemy team, Wukong is our support, which is basically guaranteed at this point, unless you put Jace in the mid lane. Which is not common. So you know that it's going to be Senna Wukong in the bot lane. Jarvan's going to be the jungler. Jace is going to be the top laner. So you pick Camille, which is going to outscale Jace relatively. It's going to outscale Jace significantly. And it's the kind of matchup where if Camille gets a little bit of attention in the early game, she can snowball and make it somewhat unplayable for the Jace. At least that's been my experience in that matchup. Then we have Galio locked in blind. I think this was a pretty good decision by 100 Thieves because it eliminates the possibility of Cloud9 picking up Galio. Galio is a player that Niski has played in the past, and so is Rumble. So I think Rumble or Galio is a much better fourth pick on red side than the Jace because you would have forced 100 Thieves to try to counter mid, which there aren't many good counters to Galio and Rumble. And then you would have seen their top laner and could have responded accordingly. I think that would have been a much better way to go about this draft. So they pick the Cassiopeia in an attempt to exploit Galio's laning weakness so that Cassiopeia could scale really well. Senna's going to scale okay, but she doesn't do as much damage as a lot of other AD carries, especially somebody like Ashe. And then we have Jace, which is a good champion in a vacuum, but just not the best draft from Cloud9. And you could say like maybe I have a negative opinion of the draft because I know that they lost, but I think that most of the criticisms that I've given about the draft are somewhat obvious and not controversial at all. So here we see Camille is already getting a lot of damage onto Jace, so I'm assuming Jace backs here and has to teleport back into lane. Yeah, Jace teleports back into lane because Jarvan was ready for a counter gank. Jarvan comes top. This is very smart by 100 Thieves, or by C9. Are they able to freeze this? No, they're not. Okay, so this is basically the easiest way to win the game. Now Camille is ahead. She can freeze her lane if she wants to. Let's see if somebody freezes it. Yeah, so the lane is in a great spot. The lane is in a great spot for Camille at this point. And is that another? Nope. So the lane is relatively frozen. No TP advantage. They're going for Dragon. They have a 1.2k gold lead. 1.3. They get the first Dragon. I'm sure they're going to get the Rift Herald too, right? So now we have a 2k gold lead at 8 minutes and 30 seconds. That's pretty gigantic. A lot of that has to do with the bot lane. Like I said, Ashe Karma against Wukong Senna. It's going to be very difficult for the Wukong to be able to CS correctly. Now, you might be able to make the argument that the amount of gold you need for Senna Wukong to be powerful is much lower than other lanes because Senna is continuously growing in strength because of her passive. But there were definitely other ways to. There were definitely other champions that would have less of an issue laning against the Ashe Karma. You knew they were playing Ashe Karma, so you should have just flexed the Wukong, especially if you're gonna pick something like Jace. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's a 2k gold lead. 100 Thieves makes a pretty big mistake there. So that's one of the reasons why you can't really think that 100 Thieves is a great team is because they make some pretty questionable decisions. Like, you don't have to fight that to win the game, is basically the point that most people would make. So 1k gold. Wow, Someday actually dies straight up against Jace. So I guess that's just Licorice being a good player. Someday taking a trade that he shouldn't have. And now it's on even gold because of that. "100 Thieves" picks up another dragon. Galio's ultimate is interrupted. Poom decides to not flash there. That's interesting. Gold is relatively even. Let's see how they break this open. I'm just going to wait until they break the game open, because there is a play where they just take over the game. Is this it? So C9 goes in for an engage in the mid lane. Olaf is already very powerful at this point. Galio gets a good ultimate off after the Jarvan doesn't shut down his own ultimate, which kind of trapped himself. They pick up 3 kills. Now we have a 3,000 gold lead. They have Rift Herald. They have a dragon advantage. They're going to pick up another dragon right now. They take two towers in the mid lane, and this is the kind of position that no professional team should lose from, in my opinion. It doesn't mean that they won't lose from this position. It just means that they shouldn't lose from this position. Like, I'm using my words very carefully. And then from this point on, contracts just got out of control. So let's go to the next game. Let's go to this. So let's turn off the camera for a second. Okay, so in this draft, this is from today. They don't play Lucian. They played Set top lane. So we have first pick Aphelios. I think first picking Aphelios is very smart. Just waiting for the lock-in. Okay, so Aphelios I think is probably it's definitely exploitable by the other team, but you're basically locking in the best champion in the game, or one of the best champions in the game, and forcing the enemy team to respond to it. So how does Cloud9 respond? Cloud9 picks up Ashe, and Ashe is a champion that is considered a soft counter to Aphelios, not because she has a higher damage output or anything like that, but because of the positional advantages she can give to her team. And the positional advantages that she can give is zoning off Aphelios, because if Aphelios is in a vulnerable position, she will use her ultimate to either stun him or force a flash. So there are a lot of points in this game where Aphelios is going to need to be hyper aware of the CC that's coming in, and is going to have to play around that. So it's like you have more tools to make a pocket passer move around in the pocket and be afraid. If you remember that analogy that I continuously use. So they went with Ashe, and they went with Lee Sin. So Lee Sin is a power pick for Blabber. It's not one of the best champions in this meta. It's a champion that's powerful in the early game, but and the mid game, but it's going to be outscaled in the late game. So how does Evil Geniuses respond? They pick Volibear, which is a strong champion right now. It's a little bit overstated how strong the champion is, especially when you're going into something like an Ashe. Ashe is able to kite Volibear pretty easily when she's ahead. When it's even and Volibear can kind of run in, soak up a lot of the damage, and then force her to move away from the rest of the team, that is a benefit. But I don't love the Volibear into Ashe specifically. It's more just that it's a strong pick in isolation, and I guess against the Lee Sin, he can probably almost go even in the early game against Lee Sin, but Lee Sin will have easier ganks. But once Volibear hits level 6, now we can tower dive and stuff. That's pretty interesting. Golden Glue is on Zoe. I'm pretty sure Zoe is one of Golden Glue's best champions. I remember him playing it a lot on Golden Guardians last split or last year. I'm not sure which time period I'm thinking of, but he played a lot of Zoe at one point in his professional career. So we're getting a comfort pick for Golden Glue, which is always a good thing. And since they blind pick it, they don't care about Syndra. So they were probably planning on taking Zoe. That's why they banned out the LeBlanc and the Twisted Fate as two champions that could deal with the Zoe. Not necessarily counter the Zoe, but deal with Zoe. Syndra is an okay response, but there are champions that can punish this more. I don't remember them off the top of my head. I'd have to do some research. But Syndra is okay into Zoe because when Zoe uses her ultimate, you can drop an orb and then scatter the weak, and that kind of will interrupt Zoe's trading pattern. I don't have a huge issue with the Syndra. I just don't think it really works incredibly well with the Ashe specifically. It does create some zones of control around objectives if you're in position first, but when you're losing, Syndra never feels good because it's like, unless you one-shot somebody, you're not really doing... if you're not one-shotting somebody or creating that zone of control that I was talking about, you're not really doing much. Next up, we have Bard. Again, I think Bard is one of the best champions in League of Legends right now because of his ultimate. I think it's game-changing. It requires the enemy team to burn flashes very often. It starts team fights very well. It stops Rift Herald. It shuts down towers for tower dives. It just does a lot of great things. It does a lot of great things, especially right now where objectives are so important, where objectives are more important than team fighting. Like, obviously, objectives are probably more important than fighting and skirmishing all the time, in my opinion, because that's the game that how I prefer the game to be played. But we don't typically see that. Evil Genius's response to that with Alistair and GP, and I saw that one of the guy that's in charge of scouting and analytics for Evil Geniuses, he posted a tweet. He posted a tweet and I responded, like, because yesterday he tweeted something, or I tweeted him saying, like, why would you pick this draft? Why would you put Huni on Karma as a counter pick, a quote unquote counter pick on Red 5? And he said that he agreed with me that it wasn't a good pick because there were other deficiencies that the team composition had, and he is not involved with the pick ban directly, so he probably had a conversation with them about that, I would assume. Not that I talked to him, but that he was concerned with the drafting. So then today, Evil Geniuses probably went into this game with a plan of using Volibear plus Alistair. And the smart thing about this is that as a blue side team composition, Aphelios, you cannot blind pick Volibear and Alistair because you need to know if the other team is going to have Aphelios. If the other team has Aphelios and you try to dive him, he can theoretically, like, cleanse, flash out, and kill you, or QSS, flash out, and kill you, if he has all of his cooldowns ready. But when Aphelios is the first champion that you choose, and the other team picks Ashe Bard, you don't really have to worry as much about the laning phase because, like, it's not going to be as annoying as playing against a Karma. Sure, Ashe Bard can push you into your tower, but they're not going to be able to force you off as many minions as the Ashe Karma would be able to. So I love the Alistair pick. I think it was very smart, and especially the way that they used it in this game. So we're going to watch the game, and you'll see a lot of good Alistair flanks and stuff like that. And then, obviously, Huni getting Gangplank. Gangplank is one of Huni's best champions, and it was banned out yesterday, so that wasn't an option yesterday, but it is a very good champion for Huni. Probably something that they should have banned out, or at least considered banning out, especially since they didn't have a good response to it. Picking Set into Gangplank just lets Gangplank do whatever he wants to in the laning phase. Unless you, like, continuously gank him with Lee Sin, which is an option, but it's pretty difficult to actually do that without GP just scaling out of his mind. So let's go through the game. And that was their game plan. So Cloud9 went top and killed Gangplank. They have a 1.4k gold lead. But there were a lot of points here where Evil Geniuses made good decisions, and that's the reason why I'm so high on Evil Geniuses as a team. I think that they have the ability to play really well because they are very talented. And when I was talking about the team bringing in Huni, bringing in Golden Glue, I think this is the kind of game where you really see why it was such a good move. Obviously, yesterday it did not look like a good move. So the dragon is on the rift. That means that they're going to start looking for a fight. Blabber goes in onto Bang, goes for an insect, but that fails. So that was a questionable decision. He was killed pretty easily right there. They go 1-for-1. Bang does die, but after Licorice TPs in, flashes, doesn't get anything off, and dies himself. That gives away another dragon to Evil Geniuses. So now Evil Geniuses has 2 dragons. They can fight over the next one, which is going to give them soul point. So let's see what happens next in the game. It's going to be a Rift Herald fight. So Svensgaren dies for no reason. Basically, at this point, Evil Geniuses should be saying to themselves, like, all we need to care about is dragon. We don't need this Rift Herald. If we can get the Rift Herald, we're not going to give it up for free. Or we're not going to avoid it at all costs. Like, if it was a free thing to take, then yes, you're going to take it. But you didn't need to walk into them like that, obviously. So 1.5k gold lead for Cloud9. But like I was saying, Cloud9 is going to get outscaled by the Aphelios and by the Gangplank. So let's keep going. Dragon's up in 10 seconds. So now this is where Zoe really shines. That was a bad play there by Alistair, but it's whatever. So they chunked out Lee Sin a little bit. They're going to continuously try to do damage to him so that they can take another dragon for free. Bang gets caught out. That's pretty bad. But the Lee Sin is extremely low and is going to get taken out by the Volibear, right? Right? Yep. So that's a good job by Golden Glue. Not the easiest Q to land on the Lee Sin. Licorice comes in, dies. And that should be another dragon for Evil Geniuses. So Cloud9, it's not like Cloud9 was just rolling over and letting Evil Geniuses do whatever they wanted to. This was a lot of good aggressive play by Evil Geniuses, which we did kind of see out of Golden Glue yesterday. It's just his plays worked today and they didn't work yesterday. Some of the decisions that he made on Orianna yesterday were pretty horrible. But again, on Zoe, maybe this is just a much better champion for him. It is one of his most played champions in professional play, I believe. Vulcan just died for no reason there. No reason to defend that mid tower. Obviously it does give away a positional advantage to the other team, but if you're going to die, you don't want to die. And this was kind of the most important team fight of the game, I believe. So Cloud9 still knows that the game is very close. They have a tower advantage. They're down 3 dragons, which is concerning. Licorice got into a very good flanking position. Takes Golden Glue. Bard ults Volibear, which is not very important. Gangplank is still very strong on the side of the fight. Licorice was still trying to get onto the back line, but nobody goes down. So what happens is Licorice has to back and is going to look for a TP. Alistair is the only player from Evil Geniuses that had to back, so we're just going to have another team fight, and this is a very volatile team fight. This is not easy. This was not easy to play from either team, so this requires good shot calling and a good understanding of the position that they're in. So Cloud9, obviously, they're the ones who need to take the initiative because they are in danger of giving up soul point, and soul point for Evil Geniuses is especially bad because they have Volibear, they have Alistair, they have 2 champions that are going to benefit from this additional magic resist and armor and the shield immensely. Their job is to start these fights, and as long as they're able to start these fights and disrupt Cloud9's how Cloud9 is set up, it's going to be extremely difficult for Cloud9 to fight these intelligently, or at least the way they want to. So let me slow this down. Right now, obviously, you can see Zeyzal is charging up a Hex Flash, and this is why I said in Champion Select, in the pick ban phase, Zeyzal played this really well. So Zeyzal Hex Flashes onto the backline, gets onto Vulcan and Sven at the same time, and this allows Evil Geniuses to take out Ashe first in this team fight. Now the team fight is very disjointed, and Cloud9 does do a good job responding by not instantly getting aced. Bang and Golden Glue almost killed Vulcan right there. Licorice was almost able to take out Huni on Gangplank, but Huni flashed out in a pretty good way. Huni backs and is looking for a teleport back into the fight. Right here, it's pretty... I wouldn't say unlucky. I think Licorice just actually did a good job understanding that he had to control that choke point so that he could try to kill Golden Glue and Alistair. Taking out Alistair is good, but you really needed to probably get rid of the Zoe for this not to turn into a difficult decision around the Dragon Pit. So now Cloud9 needs to decide, how do we fight this dragon? And also Golden Glue gets pretty lucky here by taking the blue buff with the Sleepy Trouble Bubble. I'm not sure what the interaction is with that, because it looked like Syndra was pulling the blue buff away while Golden Glue landed the Sleepy Trouble Bubble. So Golden Glue right there, that's a good pick. It requires good vision by the team, which they have. And this is another reason why I talk about the importance of position, because Evil Geniuses having the tempo advantage and the positional advantage allows them to force Cloud9 to walk towards them. And when you're walking through a choke point like the area around blue buff, you're giving Zoe a lot of places where Sleepy Trouble Bubble is very impactful. Like right here, right there, right here, right here. It's basically controlling that entire alleyway. So we get an ultimate from Ashe, but there's no way that Licorice is going to be able to take away the Dragon Soul, because Zoe has Smite. So Licorice just dies for nothing right there. And I think that at this point you really can say that Evil Geniuses is just going to win the game, as long as they continue to play well. Like, once they have Dragon Soul, all they have to do is start posturing around the Baron Pit and force Cloud9 to walk into them once again. So the reason why this is helpful and makes the game much easier is because the way that Cloud9 is looking to engage is with an Ashe Arrow, with a Set ultimate, with a Bard ultimate, with getting a Lee Sin kick, or even like a pick with Syndra, but it's going to be much more difficult to accomplish that when you have Volibear and Alistair sitting in front of the carries of the team. So this is also a good fight to watch. So we're slowing down. And again, Alistair is looking to create the engage onto the back line. Bard is looking to ult Aphelios and Volibear. Aphelios walks off to the side. Svenskeren is able to avoid that. And Evil Geniuses just instantly gets onto Ashe. So this is the great thing about Evil Geniuses team composition is they have the ability to force fights on the other team. Ashe does not have Flash right now. Like, we talk about the importance of having summoners during these team fights. When Ashe does not have Flash, Alistair is going to Alistair is going to engage onto Ashe pretty easily. The only way for this to be avoided is if he flashed in and Set instantly ulted Alistair, which I think is what he was trying to accomplish, but he wasn't able to do it. So Alistair with Volibear jumping into the backline, that seems pretty unfair, especially when Aphelios is using his ultimate as a follow-up onto Alistair, which is another great part of this composition, which wasn't readily apparent in the drafting phase, but you need to remember that Aphelios' ultimate is broken out of its mind. Broken out of its mind? I don't know if that makes any sense. But Aphelios is a broken champion, and that's the reason why I still think that Aphelios is a good first pick, because a lot of teams do not draft around it correctly. So they thought that, give up the Aphelios. We'll take Ashe. We'll play something like Ashe Bard. We'll have Lee Sin to insect him into our team. Like, there's no problem. Like, we'll be able to deal with the Aphelios. But if you don't play perfectly against the Aphelios, or if the Aphelios starts to snowball at all, you are going to just get blown up. That's just the way that it is in League of Legends right now, where Aphelios is the king. So Evil Geniuses zones off the Baron very well. Golden Glue does a good job chunking out Lee Sin, and this is the game. There's no way that Evil Geniuses should lose from this position. There's no way that, well, there are ways, but there is no way that Evil Geniuses should lose once they have Dragon Soul. So real quick, let's think about some of the similarities between those two games that we just watched. This is not the game. Let me get the 100 Thieves game back in front of us. So if if you're a team looking to beat Cloud9, you're going to watch these two games, and you're going to try to figure out what made these compositions successful, and what about their play style was what parts of the play style and the game plan and the drafting phase are reproducible. So obviously both teams went after dragon control. So if your game plan is to establish dragon control throughout the game, you need to have a jungler that is strong in the early game and is going to be able to match Blabber's aggression. You're also going to want to have ways to get back into the game if you're not able to establish dragon control. So in both of these games, 100 Thieves and Evil Geniuses picked top laners that would outscale Cloud9. So Huni did that by picking Gangplank. Huni did that by picking Gangplank. There were probably some ways for Cloud9 to respond to the Gangplank pick with a champion that scales just as hard. Maybe pick something like Camille. I don't remember if Camille was banned out. I also don't know how that matchup goes. I'm not a Camille player. Let's see. Yeah, they banned out. Wait, this isn't the right game. Alright, so never mind. But yeah, so basically, a few things to think about would be trying to establish dragon control. So this would probably place a high priority on ways to engage onto a team that's already set up onto dragon, and ways to exploit teams that are out of position when the dragon starts. I think that this is really the most important part of team composition building right now, is how are we going to be able to get into this dragon pit or fight somebody that's already in the dragon pit. This is the key point for drafting right now, because you cannot, there are a lot of teams where if there's a giant talent discrepancy, they're just going to get blown out of the water. They're going to get blown out of the water in the laning phase, and by C9's extreme aggression and stuff like that. But you can't just say to yourself, we're going to get destroyed in lane, so we have to pick team compositions that only scale, and we're going to give up all the dragons and give up everything until we can fight them at a dragon fight later in the game. That's not a smart way to play League of Legends. The smart thing to do is to try to focus on the parts of the game that you can kind of predict. And again, that's the 20-minute mark, 25-minute mark, 30-minute mark. We know what these champions are going to look like on 1 item, 2 items, 3 items, because players do not deviate from their build paths very often at all. The only times they do something like that is when they need to buy something like a QSS because of extreme CC threats on the other team. But I mean, we can kind of figure out with 90 to 95% certainty what the build of the team is going to look like once all the champions are locked in. So at that point, teams need to be able to tell each other, on 1 item, we're stronger. On 2 items, we're weaker. On 3 items, we're weaker. So we need to establish a large enough gold lead to compensate for the item differential that we're going to experience later in the game. The problem is that these teams, I would bet any amount of money that they have no idea how to quantify that difference. That's my argument, and I'm sticking to it. They could figure it out, but I'm saying right now they do not have that as a known quantity right now. They don't know how to look at a game and instantly calculate at what points they're stronger or weaker. If I took the gold off of the screen right now, I bet that 90% of players would not be able to identify what the gold lead is. Not who is winning. It's pretty obvious to see who is winning when it's 17-6 and 4 dragons to 0. But if I ask them to give me an exact number of the gold differential, plus or minus 1,000 or 2,000 gold, to give them, or actually not even 1,000 or 2,000. That's a lot. Maybe give them a plus 1,000 minus 1,000. If I put them on this screen right here, where it has all of these numbers, let's go before the fight even happens. So this screen right here, if I took off the gold, would you be able to tell me within 1,000 gold which team is winning? Not which team is winning. Would you be able to tell me the gold of each team, or the difference in gold between each team? And I think the answer is no. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a screenshot of something like this, and I'm going to put it on Twitter, and I'm going to try to get you all to answer the question without you knowing what the teams are, so you can look up and cheat. So you're going to have to give me a good answer based off of that picture. Check out my Twitter timeline. I will be posting this picture soon, and I'll try to find it in like a good game where it's very close. And like not only you're not going to tell me only like which team is currently winning, but also which team is going to win because of item breakpoints in the future, stuff like that. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this video informative and educational. If you enjoyed this content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, checking me out on Twitter, checking me out on Twitch, and subscribing on YouTube. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.